Where'd you get these two guys from?
Hello and welcome to episode 25 of the Time of Sport podcast. It's Daniel here, joined once again by my brother Sean.
How's it going?
So yes, this is the first of our weekly sports reviews, and we're looking to do a few of them over the next few weeks to see what people think. I guess, Sean, we couldn't have picked a busier weekend to do it on.
Yeah, exactly. It was action-packed there. Just finishing up with the golf late last night. So busy weekend of sport, from rugby to football to golf. So a lot to get through today.
Yeah, so we'll give you our take on the Premier League. There's VAR talk, Irish players. Is there too many goals in the Premier League? Believe it or not. We're going to discuss the Irish clubs in the Europa League. We didn't get a chance to last week. We're going to review the US Open, just finished here, and Bryson DeChambeau. And then there's Sam Bennett in the green jersey, the Tour de France, Leinster's exit from the Champions Cup, and Cuala's win in the Dublin Championship GA. So a lot to get through, as I said. We'll start with the Premier League, Sean, and we'll kind of go through them game by game. We have a few talking points here. Everton beating West Brom 5-2 fairly emphatically. James Rodriguez, I guess, kind of emerged now that they pretty much got him on a free, and all they had to do was pay his final year wages from Madrid, which is about £8 million.
Yeah, West Brom were really poor again. The red card from the experience, Kieran Gibbs didn't help, Slaven Bilic, but take nothing away from Everton. And for a team that kind of struggled in those games last season, Carlo Ancelotti just seems to have them playing a little bit better football. They kind of changed their formation. They played quite a rigid 4-4-2 last year. Seems that he's got Richarlison off the left, James Rodriguez off the right now in a 4-3-3. Very balanced midfield. So Everton have really started the season positively. To have 6 points from the first two games would help them, but I'm sure the manner in how they've won, keeping a clean sheet against Tottenham and then against West Brom, probably showing a bit more attacking flair than we've seen from Everton in recent years. And it all centres around James Rodriguez. Look, I think he's going to be one of the signings of the season, regardless of how well Everton do, and he'll bring out the best in Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin and these types of players which will really help move Everton forward. I think it's that one marquee signing that can just strengthen the whole side, really.
Yeah, and on the Irish front, I guess, before we move on to Seamus Coleman, I thought Dara did quite well, particularly on the ball for West Brom in a back five. He was left centre back in the first half. They were actually playing quite well, to be honest with you, before the Everton got the couple of goals, and he had to move into left back in the second half, and I thought he did quite well. And particular focus here, Sean, on Seamus Coleman. I think we both agreed maybe Matt Doherty was probably the right call, but after the last couple of performances from Seamus Coleman, there's no way Stephen Kenny can leave him out for the next crucial qualifier away to Slovakia.
Yeah, I think he'll slot Coleman straight back in there, but it all depends on how Doherty does in the coming weeks. I think Doherty maybe just doesn't suit the right back position rather than the right wing back, but brilliant for Seamus Coleman because he stayed loyal to Everton. That was his 250th Premier League game. He's been there about 10 or 11 years. He's been a wonderful servant for them. And it's great to see him back flying because he's had a couple of difficult years, of course, a couple of bad injuries, and just to see him back captain in that Everton side, and he'll be so crucial to them going forward because he's got that Premier League experience from a team that probably lacks a lot of it. They're quite a young side in that regard. So great to see Coleman back flying, and he definitely given Stephen Kenny a few selection headaches, no doubt.
Yeah, final point on this game. So Kieran Gibbs got the stupid red card that we spoke about. I think no one can have complaints on that. What were your thoughts on the Slaven Bilic red card, Mike Dean? Because I know there's a bit of debate here between the two of us.
Yeah, I think Slaven Bilic is very unlucky to get a red card. I think it's just Mike Dean being Mike Dean. I think it looks bad because Slaven Bilic goes over to him in Goodison Park, as in with most grounds, the changing rooms have to be separate. So Slaven Bilic is walking past the ref anyway. Mike Dean doesn't want to know, and he just does what Mike Dean does, shows a red card. And I just thought it was a bit petty, a bit harsh. Look, Slaven Bilic just wants to obviously ask a few questions. There was a couple of VAR decisions that happened. There was obviously the red card, which I don't think he'd any problems with, but I think it was just Mike Dean being Mike Dean again.
I personally think that he should never put himself in the situation. An experienced manager like Slaven, firstly, that the VAR decision for the goal was correct and the red card was correct, so he actually doesn't even have a leg to stand on. And I think that's very important as a manager, that when you are giving out, it is 100% an injustice, because I don't think he could really come into the players and say, he didn't do anything wrong. He was a little bit aggressive, albeit when I was watching it live, I did think Mike Dean was going to put out the yellow. But I take your point that it was a very harsh red card, but I don't think Slaven Bilic, at that experience, should be putting himself in that position to get sent off like that.
Yeah, I think it's just the heat of the moment. I think it's, difficult start for the season for Slaven, and it's probably just spilled over. But Mike Dean being Mike Dean, and he's grand sometimes, and he can just be a pain to managers, the others.
Yeah, he's on Peter Crouch podcast. It's quite funny actually, from the Chicken Factory originally. So look, there is a human inside the referee, but we won't talk about referees anymore. Leeds 4, Fulham 3. Sean, I really want to focus on Patrick Bamford. I was just amazed, particularly the fourth goal, the pace he showed to get down that left and set it up. What are your thoughts on him? Like, because it seems that, albeit in a small sample, that Bielsa has kind of transformed Patrick Bamford a little bit, or am I being very quick to kind of make that point? Because I have been very impressed in the 2 games so far in the Premier League.
Yeah, like he's surprised, I think, many, because he's had a couple of spells in the Premier League. He's kind of been someone that has done quite well at Championship level, never quite made it to Premier League. Probably got that Cameron Durrant syndrome of being too good for the Championship, maybe not good enough for the Premier League. I think with Patrick Bamford, at times last year he probably lacked confidence, didn't always do it for them. I know they kind of swapped and changed him and Tyler Roberts up top, but he started the Premier League season well, and sometimes that's all you need, just to kind of get a couple of goals, feel confident, especially for someone like him who had Premier League experience. But Leeds overall, look, I think they're just kind of breezing through life in the Premier League so far. 8 goals in 2 games is, I don't think many people expected. I don't even think Leeds fans, even the most optimistic of Leeds fans, would have expected this start. But crucially, they got the 3 points. Look, again, vulnerable at the back. Liam Cooper came in alongside Koch. I think that's going to be the partnership going forward for them. Whether they can find some sort of solidity there, who knows. But a great start for Leeds, and look, I hope they have a great year, and going forward, definitely they'll need to improve defensively, but going forward at the moment they just seem to have a great rhythm and kind of kicked on from where they left the Championship pre-lockdown and just after lockdown.
You mentioned the 4-3 or the 2-4-3s there that Leeds have, and Everton being 5-2. There was actually 39 goals in the Premier League weekend with 2 games still to go, and the record's 43 for a 20 game week, so they're actually only 4 games. The reality is it'll probably be broken. What's causing this too many goals? Like, are we too quick to jump on this? Like, we had the lockdown football before. Post-lockdown football, the goals, there were almost no goals really, especially in first half. So what do you think's contributed to this? I guess the small pre-season, not enough time to work on defences. Is it that simple? Is it just a one-off? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think it's probably a couple of different issues. I think people have just got used to playing games behind closed doors. A lack of pre-season maybe for clubs defensively. I don't know. I think it's just probably the sign of the times maybe. I think teams in England, most teams want to play and have a huge amount of attacking flair. Even if you look at some of the money that's been spent, look at Ollie Watkins there, 30 million to Aston Villa. You know, I'd look at West Ham's bench the other day. I think you had Anderson, Haller, Yarmolenko. So the attacking quality is there right across the league. Defensively, it's probably a lot weaker. I think a couple of different factors. Yeah, lack of a pre-season, but also managers are under pressure to play an expansive style of football now in the Premier League. You think of the likes of Graham Potter, for example, who was brought in from Brighton after. And
Brighton were targeting him for about 5 years. I only found out in the commentary there today.
Yeah, their chief executive is very on the ball there, and they got Chris Hughton, and he got him to the promised land of the Premier League, but they got a bit of criticism for sacking him at the time. They brought in Graham Potter to play a different style of football. And a lot of clubs are going for that. I know Norwich, when they came up last year, they had a style of play that was adopted from not only the first team, but down right away down the youth side. So clubs are going that way. It's the modern game. The kind of depth of 0-0 games is gone. And even if you look at the Championship, a lot of goals being scored. I know Blackburn beat Wickham. I think it was 4-0 or 5-0. Just goals are being scored more frequently now. The game is moving on, and teams are getting used to playing games behind closed doors.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on to United, Crystal Palace. I don't think we've called Palace particularly well in 2 games in. I guess we never write off Roy Hodgson. This was unreal. Unlike their victory last year in Old Trafford, they completely deserve this, and we'll get to the VAR and handball rule in a second, but this was a fantastic performance. Probably the best I've seen that front 3 with Ayew, Zaha and Townsend. What were your thoughts on Palace overall? They were amazing, like Zaha in particular, obviously.
Yeah, look, Palace are really good away from home. I think they've had one of the best away records under Roy Hodgson in the league, but particularly against the big side, they've caused Manchester City problems a couple of years ago, beat Manchester United last year, and then I think they've just started the season well. Wilfred Zaha was hungry against Manchester United to right a few wrongs, maybe from his spell there. Jordan Ayew looks really sharp at the moment. Andres Townsend just continues to deliver. Really, he's a really good player for Crystal Palace. But I think their midfield, and on Match of the Day they highlighted James McArthur and James McCarthy in the midfield. Just give them a real solidity, especially on the break when they can afford to have keep a few guys up there for a counter attack because of the work they get done in midfield. And Roy Hodgson just continues to deliver results, and every time, like we said, we doubted them at the start of the season, and you still do have worries for them, Crystal Palace, because of the kind of side, if they get in a rut they might struggle to get out of. But at the moment they've started the season well, and we spoke about how important a good start is for teams in and around that 15th to 20th position, and Palace have had the best start out of anyone. And you know, all of a sudden if they get 4 wins from 6 or they start picking up points at regular intervals, then they can start looking towards top 10 and potentially European football. But one step at a time for Palace, and Roy Hodgson will know that. But a great performance from them, and look, to score 3 goals away at Old Trafford, albeit a good time to play Manchester United, is an impressive feat in itself.
Yeah, let's focus on the handball rule now and the VAR decision. What were your thoughts on it? Like, it was almost comical watching it live. You're like, Gary Neville did a couple of oohs. The first ooh when he's like, he's going to give a penalty. The second one then when David De Gea made the save, the ball was on the left wing, and you heard Gary Neville going, it's going to be taken again, and you couldn't really believe it. Let's go with the handball rule first, and I guess on to the penalty. Premier League are trying to bring themselves in line with Europe. Have they gone too far here with the handball rule? Like, I think there's a lot of pressure on refs to nail it in the first couple of weeks, and I don't know if managers and players will put up with this interpretation, or fans as well. Like,
yeah, well, we spoke about it when we spoke to the 2 inter-county GA refs about changing the rules so frequently, and the issues.
It's exactly like Ghana.
Yeah,
isn't it?
It's the issues that cause. I mean, there's people talk about there's no consistency. Well, there's no consistency because when you keep trying to evolve and change the rules, then you don't find any consistency. Look, I think when you start changing the rules because of certain things that have happened in certain maybe decisions, then you find that lack of inconsistency. There was a handball potentially in the Arsenal game where it hit Gabriel.
Yeah, so that wasn't given because apparently his sleeve, and if it's on your sleeve, it's not a handball. But like, what happens if you wear, as they said on Match Today, a 3/4 length sleeve? So where do you draw the line now? Obviously, that, you know what I mean?
Exactly. And then you go back to the handball in the Leeds game against Liverpool in the first game of the season. Like, I didn't think there should be anyway. That was a penalty, but because of the interpretation of the rule and because it's changed, it was. I think VAR, the problem with VAR is it was brought in to help the big decisions rather than it's as Richard Keys
we're going to quote this finally, episode 24, 25, we're finally quoting Richard Keys.
Yeah, where he famously said it's VAR, video assisted refereeing, or video assistant referee, not VR, video refereeing.
Yeah, the VAR thing, I was a fan of VAR. I don't think you were, or you weren't overly, you had reservations, and now we're at a stage where, Jesus, like it's almost like careful what you wish for, and they're almost going to ref everything, and the refs going to the monitor, I guess, is a good thing. But you know, chances are when a ref is getting called to the monitor, it takes some, you know, balls not for him not to stick with his decision after being called to the monitor. Like, yeah,
the problem with all sorts of advancements in technology and sport, it takes ages to bed in, and unless you've got, you know, the World Cup that they kind of trialed it there, they found issues that you thought worked quite well overall, but it takes time to bed in, and once you start having discrepancies between leagues and tournaments, and that's when it starts getting messy. And I think at the moment you can't say scrap it entirely, but I think for certain it should be there for certain issues at the moment. You know, your offsides or your penalties where there's clear contact or something like that, rather than if you start doing, it's a handball because it touched him in the build up to a goal, and all that kind of stuff. That's when it starts, you know, when you start getting into the small detail of it. That's, in my opinion, why it shouldn't be there.
Yeah, and I think there's people are just sick of talking about it after every week, and we seems like this week was just a real kind of watershed moment again for VAR, like there is every season, usually at the start of the season. So, quick word on United before we move on. It seemed a very like walk in football. Someone said on Twitter, "Is it too early to be concerned?" Or like I did get the sense watching it that this is the old Ollie problems that they had before lockdown.
Yeah, maybe just a lack of creativity, although rustiness has to come into it. couple of big fixtures coming up, Brighton and then Spurs. So Jose Mourinho going back there to manage against Manchester United. So pressure's on for, we spoke about having a good start, especially in the current league with it being so condensed. Pressure's on for Ollie. Game midweek might help. The Carabao Cup just probably take a little bit of pressure off, but you can't afford to lose 2 or 3 games early on, and then you're chasing the 8 ball, and it's not a position where they want to be. Although they haven't had it easy with pre-season, with people getting the coronavirus, the stuff about Mason Greenwood, Donny van de Beek signing, came on and scored a goal. So interesting time for Ole Gunnar. There was a lot of problems, and some of them came in there on Saturday.
Yeah, now moving on to Arsenal, I don't think we were going to spend too long here. Like, I guess it was just a bit of quality in the end shaded it, but if you're being overly harsh and looking at Arsenal, it seemed like they kind of took a couple of steps backward yesterday against home to West Ham. How do you think they feel? Because there's a lot of optimism with Arteta. Arsenal had a real style of football. I guess losing Tierney just before kickoff was a massive blow. But what were your thoughts on that performance against West Ham? Because after the West Ham's defeat against Newcastle, it was kind of seen as a home banger for Arsenal to really kick on, and I think they're very fortunate to win the game.
I think it's just behind closed doors football. It's like you're going to get those games where the intensity's just not there. The sharpness isn't there. West Ham came and I thought played quite well. They had a bad performance against Newcastle, so came with a point to prove. Those are the kind of games, especially in lockdown. I think Liverpool's win against Leeds where they didn't play well. Very few positives to take. Yet they won 3 points. I think it's similar for Arsenal. I think there's going to be a lot of games like this over the next 2 or 3 weeks, especially at the start of the season. Players coming back who haven't played a lot of first team football or even competitive football in the last while. So a win, 3 points, Arsenal, perfect start for them, but certainly not the most fluid of performances.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on to Spurs, like Southampton Spurs, this was a ridiculous game really. Spurs ended up winning 5-1. The first half, I'd say before the goal, you'd be like, Southampton are playing well. I guess a lot of the worries they had going into the game with their couple of defeats both in the Premier League and the Carabao Cup, but I guess the goal Spurs got right before half time was crucial, and Saints' defence just fell apart in the second half. Like, I don't know if I've seen a collapse like it, and there were worrying signs in the first half, to be fair, at the very start, but Saints seemed to grow into it. What were your thoughts on Spurs? And I guess a massive win for Jose Mourinho, because I guess if they had lost that game 1-0 to Southampton, or had lost the game, having lost to Everton at home, the pressure would have been on. Like, a lot of Spurs fans are kind of going against them or pulling against them. I guess dropping Dele Alli from the squad, rumours of him going to PSG, it just seems like this was a massive win for Spurs with Bale and Reguilon coming in as well.
Yeah, a good win for them, but I just thought really they kind of struggled early on. Eric Dyer, centre half, I thought struggled, probably at fault for the goal. Lloris then probably at fault for the goal, but they're starting to kind of find their feet this season. A couple of new additions, Højbjerg in midfield, Matt Doherty a right full. So Tottenham are going to take a bit of time to gel. I think there's a few new players coming in. Interesting to see how the 2 new signings, Gareth Bale, where will he play? That front three of Son, Kane and Bale would probably work and could probably be dangerous for them. But I thought Southampton I thought their defence and their defending and their whole structure around defending was way off.
It reminded me of the 9-0 against Leicester. Like.
Yeah, I think, and kind of similar attacks really at the Leicester and Tottenham. Tottenham early on just wanted to get the ball down the channels, work Southampton back. Tottenham don't have incredible creativity in and around the final third in terms of getting players in between the lines to try and use their pace on the break and the nous that Kane and Son have. And Southampton just let them do that, and they let them do that all day. Just balls in over the top, Kane to Son using his pace, and it was incredibly poor defending and really sort of worrying performance from Southampton, who a lot of people tipped them to finish in the top 10, and with performances like that's not a performance of a top 10 team, and I would sort of be worried for Southampton if they keep that up. Against teams like Tottenham, you can't afford to play that high line and it cost them, and some of the goals were just repetitive. They looked like the same goal happening, and Southampton had no answer to it.
Moving on to Newcastle Brighton, I really want to talk about Aaron Connolly here, Sean, because I thought he played really well overall and he got a great goal. And I was thinking, watching him in that back 5 system again with a kind of front 2 with him and Mopé, you know, him and McGoldrick could work well together in a back five, and you've a lot of centre backs and left wing backs and right wing backs in Ireland playing in a back five. Just a quick word on Aaron Connolly firstly, and will Stephen Kenny bite the bullet and go to a back five?
No, I don't think he will. And Aaron Connolly, I thought he took his goal well. For someone like Connolly, he played for Ireland and with the 21s. He's played a lot off the left, coming in on his right foot. Sometimes as a striker, and when he scored his goals for Brighton is when he's kind of been playing in as a 2 or as the lone man and using that left channel to come in onto his right foot rather than kind of staying centrally and branching out. And that was the same with his goal. I think he took it very well, made a very good run, and an early goal in the season sometimes can kind of kick-start it. You've seen it with Calvert-Lewin and the likes already in the league, so good start for Connolly. And he kind of took his chance because Lallana was was taken out because of the injury last week, and Connolly came in, took his chance, and hopefully he can get a good run of games now leading into the qualifiers.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm particularly impressed with Lamptey. I think I saw on Twitter an English starting 11 of all right backs. It's absolutely ridiculous the riches that England have at right back.
Yeah, strength and depth, and they probably got the best right back in the world in Trent Alexander-Arnold. You know, Walker, James, Lamptey. Huge strength and depth. He's done well, Lamptey. A lot of energy there at right back, and sometimes for leaving a club like Chelsea and getting first team football is just so important for your development. And a lot, I'd see if this works well for him, I think a lot of players will make a move like that out of a club like Chelsea, out of a club like City, Chelsea, out of Manchester United to get first team football, especially in the Premier League.
First team football is everything. We even spoke about this at the very start of doing these podcasts, and players going to the lower leagues. I guess someone like Lamptey is an example of a player going into the Premier League and a lower Premier League club and playing. So moving on, Chelsea, Liverpool, quick word on the red card. It was a crucial moment in the game. Live, I wasn't 100% sure. Seeing it again, particularly on the rugby tackle, like, you know, I think it was a red. Correct decision?
Yeah, I thought it was a red card. I think Christensen probably just got caught in two minds. And
Kepa again.
Kepa again. I think Christensen probably is drawn into that foul because he thinks Mane's probably through. He thinks Kepa is probably out of position, and he just kind of makes a rash decision. But other than that, I thought Liverpool kind of bossed the game, just never really got out of second or third gear, if I'm being honest. And just a couple of moments of quality is all they needed. And all of a sudden, Chelsea, that were kind of tipped to be the breakers of the top two, if you like, kind of really struggled and really looked void of ideas throughout. And Frank Lampard, not that he'll be worried, he'll just be wanting that international break to come and maybe a bit more time for his players to gel.
Yeah, and last thing on Liverpool, I guess Thiago was a massive addition at half time, making it work, and they did look like a proper performance of champions after their defeat last week. So
yeah, Thiago, look, I think Thiago even showed his quality there today. You know, at times when you're playing, if Liverpool were playing 10 men without Thiago, they probably would have struggled at times to maybe recycle the ball, move the ball quickly, get it into wide positions, like for the goal, for Mane's goal, and that's what Thiago gives. It just spreads the play well, and I think he like I've said before, I think he's going to be a wonderful signing for Liverpool and strengthening in an area that they probably did need strengthening, and a perfect start from them again. And Mane, it was the Salah show last week, it was the Mane
that's
show.
exactly what they said on Sky, I think. Yeah, the Mane show, and fantasy managers will be over trying to get Mane in now, I guess. It's a week by week with Liverpool. It just shows their the amount of talent that they have up on that top three. So we really want to just quickly go on the Leicester Burnley game, just really a bit of a biased view on the three Irish players started. I actually tweeted two. I completely forgot about Kevin Long till we were corrected, but three Irish players starting for Burnley. I know Robbie Brady went off injured, and it was great seeing Jimmy Dunne score his goal. And you remember hearing about him a couple of years ago at Hearts, and he kind of fell away and wasn't making that many games, but he's been at Burnley for 3 years, I think 2017. So, and he was in a provisional squad in around 2018 when he was with Hearts. So it's great to see someone like Jimmy Dunne. He played well during the week in the Carabao Cup and got his game against Leicester, and I thought he played quite well and got the goal.
Yeah, and it's big for him because Tarkowski's been linked with a move away to West Ham. Ben Mee, their club captain, is injured at the moment, so it's a chance for him to make a breakthrough. And alongside Kevin Long there, his compatriot, would certainly have helped him. I remember hearing about him when he was at Hearts. I think he might have been on loan at Hearts, and I just heard good things about him, and then he kind of fell away, and sometimes you wondered, is a player going to get his break, and at the moment he's got his break, and hopefully he can kick on now, and and even just if he's there playing, you know, every couple of weeks, or he's getting first team football at any level for Burnley, it's a bonus. And again, another high scoring game.
Yeah, that kind of ramps up. It'll be interesting, the two Monday games. Quick word on Leicester. James Madison still come back into their starting 11. I guess 2 solid wins, and they seem to have gone back to the form pre-lockdown as opposed to post.
Yeah, I think a lot of people weren't sure what to expect from Leicester. Second season syndrome there for Brendan Rodgers, or second. He's been there. He's been there about 18 months now. So it's very interesting to see how they go. When you've got a player like Jamie Vardy in your team, you're always going to score goals. I thought Tielemans' pass for I think it was the third goal was sublime. And Leicester, the thing about Leicester, what made them so successful last year, they had a brilliant balance to the team, and they seem to have struck that balance again.
Yeah, so last week we didn't really get a chance to speak about the Europa League with kind of the way the podcast fell. Quick word on both Rovers and Dundalk. I guess Rovers put up a decent enough showing against Milan, and it was amazing just watching Ibrahimovic and how like ahead of the game he was. Ibrahimovic is 38. Can you believe that?
Yeah, I was pretty impressed with Rovers. I was actually coming back from Kerry at the time, but I kind of watched a lot of the highlights there on Friday, and I thought they played pretty well, Rovers, and at times they really tried to showcase their skills. Aaron Green had a couple of chances, thought he looked pretty sharp. A player that is probably underrated in Irish football, and if you were to look at strikers in the league. And Rovers will be pretty happy. What Stephen Bradley's done there, you know, we spoke about it before on the podcast. What he done there, because he could have easily been sacked about three or 4 seasons ago. Rovers stuck with him, and it's going to come to fruition. Look, you're never going to beat AC Milan in a one-legged tie like that, and it's a pity with the year that's happened that they couldn't maximise the revenue like they could have. But just even to have AC Milan in town for Rovers is big. But I'm more impressed with Dundalk winning. They got a handy tie, if you like, but with all the turmoil that's happened there with the sacking of Vinnie Perth and John Gill going, and all the sort of the background noise that's been around, just for them to win and qualify and get to the next stage again, extra income for them is a big bonus for them, I think, because a couple of weeks ago, or maybe even a month ago, they wouldn't have thought they get through. So even if after getting a good draw, they still made it count.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're 2 games away from the playoff round. So they're 2 games away from the group stage. Next round is the playoff round if they beat Sheriff Tiraspol. So yeah, massive chance for Dundalk, and we'll be keeping an eye on that. So Sean, the US Open, has the future of golf changed? Because this was an absolutely unbelievable win from Bryson DeChambeau, who kind of sneaked up on the leaderboard the first couple of days, was obviously in the final group of Patrick Reed for round 3, and kind of struggled at times, but well, Patrick Reed on the back 9 fell off. Bryson managed to stay and get himself in the final group against Matthew Wolff. But for those that remember in episode 4, if you want to check that out, we talked about Bryson with Malachy Clerkin and Peter Lowry. I think Peter was a bit dismissive or wasn't sure he could bring this into a major. Malachy was kind of questioned that there were no questions asked, which is another topic entirely. But I guess with Bryson, has the future of golf changed? Because, you know, while the USGA seemed to have got the scoring right for, you know, 99% of the golfers in the field, it seems like Bryson just had a plan of bombing it as much as he could, and his thoughts were the fairways were almost so narrow that all you had to do was hit in the rough, just hit it further than anyone else, and you could just bomb it there and try and he mentioned that he was going to base his performance this week on what Brooks did last year at Bethpage. Yeah,
look, Bryson DeChambeau, I don't think many people would have tipped him this week if you think about the length of the rough and maybe the sort of guile you needed around to get out, navigate the greens. But let's not forget, Bryson DeChambeau didn't shoot over par in any of his 4 rounds this week, and I spoke last week on the podcast saying the person who has the best 4 rounds will probably win because of the scoring. And that's what that's what he did to be the only person under par to shoot 6 under par, to be the only person to shoot under par on Sunday and shoot a 67. You know, these numbers are frightening. Never mind some of the individual holes and the drives but I was more so impressed with a sort of course management and his navigation. A lot has been talked about him just bombing the ball, but he showed a lot more than that, and you need to show a lot more than that to win a major. And I know a lot of people will come to huge, drastic conclusions about.
Well, there's been a lot of talk of that, and they said this could be the performance that changes golf, like they were talking about on Sky. It's not just a case that Twitter talk about. all the media, this is probably a kick in the face to the USGA who set up this golf course, and they had a golfer in mind who they wanted to win. They didn't want Bryson DeChambeau bombing it, and I know his driving was fairly improved on Sunday, and he actually had a lot of fairways, and he worked very hard on that Saturday night. He was at the range, so he is a different. But people do fear, and that this could be the tipping edge and the tipping point for golf to start looking at this and trying to come up with ways of either changing the equipment, changing the golf ball. I think Peter mentioned that.
Yeah, I think the USGA will probably not like the outcome, like you said, but I think the big test for Bryson is Augusta. I mean,
But just on that, like, people would have thought Augusta was his major, not the US Open.
Yeah, I think if Bryson destroys Augusta, I think then the future of golf will come into play. But
which is possible.
Yeah, which is absolutely possible. So I wouldn't make any huge assumptions based on it. I think the USGA will react to it, absolutely, and they should. When a player, plays as well as he did and uses certain aspects of the game that a lot of people have questioned, in terms of his drive and even in terms of what he does. Maybe his pace of play was a bit slow. I think it was 4.5 hours to finish. I think if he wins at Augusta and wins in a style that we've become accustomed to from him in the last 18 months or so, then the future of golf will be, it could change the future of golf. But it certainly, I know the USGA won't have liked it, but Augusta's the big test for Bryson.
Yeah, he's before the tournament, he said after the US Open, this before his win, he was going to move from a 45.5 inch driver to a 48 inch driver, and he wants to be reaching the ball speeds of 200 plus. I think his best one on Sunday was 192, so it's frightening stuff, and it's kind of, golf has a new storyline to get behind it, but like a lot of the golf media aren't too impressed with Bryson overall, I think. But last thing to mention, Sean, is the Danny Lee 6 putt from 4 feet. I think this was all lost in the madness of the US Open. So he'd 4 foot left. I think he was around +3, and he missed the 4 foot putt, and he ended up 6 putting it from there and slamming the putter, and then pulled out of the US Open with a wrist injury. It's one of them that you couldn't really make up. The full video's on Twitter if you haven't seen it. What were your thoughts on that? We kind of heard it coming in on Twitter, I guess. We didn't really, it was almost like the footage was hidden and it was released there Sunday morning. So
yeah, probably just a moment of madness from him, really, and those kind of courses do that to you, when you've been toying there for 17 holes, and it's not been easy and it's not been pretty, and people question the course setup.
Well, look at that. Like, he only tried for the first 2 putts and then gave up. Like, the course was tough, though, really tough. It
wasn't to do with any of that. We saw good scoring on the first couple of days from the likes of Justin and Rory. So, I was very impressed with Rory, for example. Didn't play his best golf all week, but kind of played well enough to keep himself thereabouts for a top 10 finish. And this is a guy who especially last year, so consistent in his top 10s, and I think that might just give him a little bit more confidence going in towards the Masters. Obviously he had an interesting year this year, the birth of the baby and sort of everything that surrounds that, but another good fine performance for him. Someone like Xander Schauffele, I think he's got an incredible US Open record, never been out of the top 7 or 8, and it just kind of sets it all nicely for a winter Augusta. I mean, this is or an autumn Augusta. This is going to be, one of the hottest tickets in town, if you like. It's going to be the main event of the year, almost, the Masters. You still have Tiger to come back and defend. You've got the likes of Justin Thomas, DJ, John Rahm, Rory McIlroy, Bryson. There's so many different storylines. Colin Morikawa. It's going to be one of the best events of the year in terms not only the golfing calendar but the sporting calendar.
Yeah, absolutely. 12th of November, and we're going to hope to get Malachy Clerkin back on for that. And behind closed doors, I guess, might give Rory that chance to be less kind of expectation, and crowds, might be a factor. So, but
you talk about events that have been kind of almost destroyed and been a bit soulless because of behind closed doors. Like, I actually think it might, as a viewer, even showcase Augusta in a better light, because the cameramen would be able to get better angles because there's no patrons there. Just even some of the undulations of it, and and just the natural beauty of Augusta and what it is will kind of stand out. Even though the crowds will be missed slightly, I think it's an event that will still be able to hold its own in this year of all years.
Absolutely. So the last couple of things from the weekend review. Leinster came up short against Saracens again. This was very unexpected. 22-3 down at half time, I guess, was the damage was done, and they tried their best. But I suppose it shows the Pro 14 standard, and even Ulster getting hammered by Toulouse, it probably did themselves no favours, Leinster and Ulster, the lead up to the games, but it was still an absolute shock, particularly the Leinster result. Yeah,
a few bad performances there across both games. I know a lot of people were questioning Jacob Stockdale's performance in the Ulster game, but special mention also to Rob Kearney, who announced his retirement from professional rugby. So
and he's releasing a book, and there's a stat that 12 of the starting 15 of the 2009 Grand Slam have released books, so there you are.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be a tremendous read, but in fairness to Rob, he was the only player there across both Grand Slams, and really was a key part of the relative or the success that the Irish rugby team had.
Absolutely, fantastic fullback for many years. Last couple of things from the weekend. Sam Bennett won the final stage to win the green jersey. An absolute phenomenal achievement. I suppose putting in context, I think he wins 25,000 euro when the winner of the US Open wins, in the region of 2 million. It's kind of apples and oranges there, I guess. But what are your thoughts on Sam Bennett? An absolutely phenomenal achievement, and I can't really put it to words like how amazing achievement it is, and it's good he's getting the recognition, because I think a lot of people have kind of latched onto this story and read a lot of his backstory over the last week or two, particularly once he won the last couple of stages.
Yeah, I suppose the Tour de France is so synonymous with the summer and big crowds and sort of all that because it's kind of gone under the radar a lot this year because of the timing of it. But for an Irishman to get there and to actually secure the green jersey by winning the final stage at the iconic Champs-Elysees and have been live on TG Car, it's kind of a feel good story for the country, because we've kind of been bereft of sort of Irish and individual Irish successes during the summer, where you normally might have an athletics or you might have a golfer, say, for example. So for Sam Bennett to kind of lift the mood of the nation in that was a huge success, and just a pity that Micheál Martin wasn't there under the Arc de Triomphe or the Eiffel Tower like Charlie Haughey was all those years ago. But I'm sure if he wanted to, he could have.
Yeah, absolutely, and a fantastic achievement from Sam, and we send her congrats. And the last thing I thought we'd cover Cuala's win in the Dublin Senior Championship. It's actually weird feeling, because normally they've claimed their 5th Dublin title in 6 years, and every one of those 5 titles they would have a Leinster to try and win and All Ireland to try and win. So little different this year. They won 220 to 118 against Ballyoden, but absolutely phenomenal achievement from Cuala. Almost underrated in the sense that this is. I think if the club had won 5 Dublin football championships in 6 years, there'd be a lot more talk about it, I guess. I just think people have taken Cuala's success for granted, but it's an absolutely tremendous achievement.
Yeah, and what they've done in that time by winning 2 All-Irelands, considering no Dublin team had ever got to that stage, really. Crumlin had won a Leinster back in the late 80s, I think. So what they've done and sort of a disappointment maybe is that success hasn't yet really gone into the inter-county team. But what Cuala have done, and another fine performance, beating Ballybowden, and they kind of put to the sword by Joe Fortune's side, and still managed to get through with a victory. And like you said there, it's kind of a weird one not being able to kick on to Leinster and All Ireland honours. And I think even if you look at Limerick, with Napirsig, the big club down there from the city, winning the Limerick senior title, that would have been a potential huge game. Napirsig and Cuala, they've had a couple of right good battles over the last couple of years, and then some of just even Kildangan winning the Tipperary senior hurling title. Like, for someone like them who winning a senior county title is such a huge deal for them. For them not to have that added bonus of a Munster championship to compete for just kind of takes the sting out of it. The celebrations probably will still be, not to a big as level as possible, obviously, but some of the emotions that were across social media from that game. That game actually went to extra time. I know Noel McGrath had a stormer as well, came out on the losing side, but it's kind of a weird time for clubs, and as a special mention also has to go to Ballybowden for being in the senior football final as well.
And Conal Keaney is due to turn 38, playing so well for Ballybowden. It's mad he's still around, like, considering we grew up watching him playing football for Dublin. Like, he was a big part of us getting really into the GA. Like,
yeah, he was one of Dublin's best forwards, especially with Alan Brogan, maybe Ray Cosgrove, kind of sort of kept
J.O. Mossy Quinn.
Kind of kept the flame going for Dublin football, those kind of players, and Kieran Whelan and them. But Conal Keaney still doing it at 38, still doing it for the Dublin senior hurlers. I mean, what people like him have done, and there's players like that right across GA or right across the country. And disappointed for him coming out in a losing battle. I know he played pretty well today. We kind of following it, but Cuala just coming out on top. But the GA club season is kind of heating up and setting nicely for the inter-county season. And
we're gonna have a podcast on Wednesday, and we're gonna speak about the club and county split season, and going forward how that's working. We'll have a look ahead to the county, because it's big time in GA, and I guess the last few weeks and months it's been great streaming. Our own match was streamed, a disaster now, but listen, but it's amazing seeing all these. Everyone's getting into the club scene, and if the matches are on RTE, TG Car, Air Sport, streams going down, people going mad, people paying for streams. It was great. It actually was great to see,
Yeah, and it's probably something we could hopefully see going forward for inter-county. A lot of inter-county games go, behind with no TV coverage. So the kind of advancements and everything and what it's made clubs and county boards do has been brilliant. And there's been some absolute brilliant games. Ballagher Dream played briefly on RTE. It was a brilliant club game just to see. The likes of Andy Moore and going toe to toe with Aidan O'Shea. Just games and
winding each other up.
Games you wouldn't necessarily see, and there would still be a few more games like that. And with the inter-county season coming on, it's a real chance for club players to showcase themselves. And I actually think we might see a few, players break into the inter-county season this year, especially with the type of football maybe that gets played because it's winter as well. So all those kind of things will add up.
Absolutely. It's amazing to see the club. We're going to have a good chat with that on Wednesday. We've planned a show regarding the county club split season, as we mentioned, going forward. So we're looking forward to that. And we're also going to have our Thursday sports preview later in the week as well. So listen, we appreciate you listening. If you like what you hear, get in touch with our Tackling Sport social media. Let us know. We're enjoying doing these kind of podcasts. So, yeah, do let us know if you'd like to hear more of it, or what kind of changes you'd like to make. Do let us know. So, please follow, subscribe, and whatever you're listening, so you never miss an episode. And all that's left to say is goodbye from Sean.
Goodbye.
And goodbye from myself. Have a great week. We'll chat to you later.
We get